Welcome to today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy the content Raw Takes provides, and also check out the show on social media. All social media links are in the description below, along with an additional link to a good buddy of mine's podcast, the Cleveland Sports Realm, hosted by Jerome Petukaukas and Kevin Shagru. It's a great little podcast, especially if you're into Cleveland sports. And joining me today on Raw Takes as we discuss the Guardians, not just the Guardians, we're talking all 30 teams. We're talking baseball's opening week in the MLB. My buddy Jerome Petukaukas joins the podcast yet again. He was on actually not too long ago, maybe about a month or so ago, I believe, right?
I think it was a little bit longer than that, but
Might have
nonetheless,
been. I kind of lost track of time, but Jerome
that's okay.
Petukaukas, I'm sorry?
No, I said that's okay. Nonetheless, it's good to be back with you.
And it's good to have Jerome back on the pod. And also make sure to check out the Cleveland Sports Realm, as I mentioned before. I believe it's on Spotify too. I watch it on YouTube. I watch the reels. They do a great job over there. So
Well,
props to you
thank
guys
you.
as well.
Yeah, very much. We appreciate that. Yeah, we are available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, but you do a really nice job yourself too. And I'm honestly very honored and thankful that you're having me back on. So thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Jerome and I go way back to our days over at Baldwin Wallace University. We worked together at the station over there. Sports director to another, kind of passed down the torch a little bit. So Jerome, in a lot of ways, was a mentor to me. So I got to give Jerome a ton of props there, just to throw that out there because Jerome really is the man. Let's get things started with March Madness. I know you had the opportunity to go to some of the games this weekend, so I want to hear about that experience and your thoughts so far on the tournament. And I'm sure your bracket's probably pretty busted by now. So's mine.
It is in some ways and it's not in others. All my Final Four teams are still in, but we're still a long ways away, right? Like there's
Yeah.
still a lot that could happen. Um, but anyway, thanks again for all the kind words, Andrew. That's really very, very, very touching and cool that you
That's what
said all
friends are
that
for,
stuff.
of course.
And you're a wonderful guy, a great guy as well. So right back at you. Anyhow, you know, to March Madness, though, what I got to tell you is I think we can call it chalk madness this year, right? Like a lot of the favorites are winning. We don't have any Cinderellas, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with NIL. And if someone's good enough, a bigger Power Five is going to buy them. And I think it's even actually worse in basketball than it is football, right? Because there's not as much of a learning curve when you transition from school to school in basketball as there is football. Um, so I think this could be a forecast of things to come in March Madness. However, my personal experience going to the games, now I have been before. I think it's a fun experience. Everyone should experience. Last night's was a little bit different though, in the sense that yeah, we were at the Breslin Center last night, Andrew. It was a Michigan State home game. In the first game I'm there and I'm kind of curious and like, this is the round of 32. Why am I not seeing a lot of folks around? And boy, halftime I walked out to grab a beverage and something to eat, and it showed me why. That was a Michigan State takeover last night, and they definitely benefited from only playing 3 hours and 30 minutes from campus. Uh, I think there was 16,000 was the reported attendance last night. I'm going to vouch to say probably 12,000 of those folks were wearing dark green. And so last night at the Q, or the Rocket Arena, if you will, I guess, was absolutely a Michigan State takeover. And it was a little bit different because you didn't really have that much representation of other three teams. I'll give the Lobos fans credit all the way out from New Mexico. Not many of those folks were there, but the ones that were, they made a lot of noise. And I still think they actually did have a decent showing considering how far from home they were.
Well, that's impressive too. Yeah, New Mexico is always a team that somehow finds their way into the tournament as well. Funny you bring them up. They don't necessarily make like deep, deep runs, but they have had some success of at least getting to the tournament. And I was actually talking to my grandfather earlier today. Shout out to Papu if he's listening. We were talking earlier today about how the 64 teams and all these like small schools, like Cleveland State, for example. Cleveland State didn't make it this year, but all these small schools have a chance. And that's actually what kind of makes the NCAA tournament so special. Yeah, you have your powerhouses like a Duke, like an Auburn or a Florida this year, and heck, like UConn the last 2 years. But there's so many small schools that you really don't hear about, and you go, wow, that's a school that exists. You know what I mean? Like when St. John's was taking on Omaha, Nebraska. I didn't even know Omaha, Nebraska was a university until then. I mean, like, I'm sure Omaha has a school, but you know what I mean? Like, these small schools have an opportunity. And I actually really, really like that about March Madness.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's always been the way it's been, but you wonder if NIL is going to put an end to that, right? Because
Yeah.
let's use one of the schools you mentioned, for example, Omaha, Nebraska. Their top player's not playing there anymore. In fact, he was a bench player for Michigan State last night. You know, like, so it's interesting. It will be interesting to see in the years to come how much more Cinderella stories we're going to be able to have in this wonderful tournament because of chalk madness. All the upper seeds winning for the most part, and NIL. And you wonder if that's going to take away of one of the truly great historical elements of this wonderful event.
I don't disagree with you there. I think NIL is starting to become a concern. It's definitely, I think, plagued the arena when it comes to college football. Even though I still love college football and I love the 12-team format, there still needs to be some adjustments. But overall, I think NIL is definitely becoming a big thing, and I think it's hitting college basketball actually relatively quicker. But one more thing before we move on to Major League Baseball and getting things started with opening week. I actually think this is kind of an interesting thing when it comes to March Madness, in that the SEC has kind of taken over so much, and maybe NIL is a huge portion of why that's the case. But I mean, for me, like you look at Tennessee, they're really good. They had a great showing against Wofford, and Wofford put up a fight. You look at Alabama, how they're doing. Auburn, Florida, like these are usually top football programs, and the football programs have kind of been suffering, but the SEC has kind of taken over the basketball realm.
Yeah, I would completely agree. The SEC had a historical year. You have 14 teams making it into the tournament. Obviously, 13 of those at large. Not that long ago when I was growing up, Andrew, Kentucky was really, really good, and everybody else from the SEC sort of sucked. Well, you also look at some of the guys who are coaching the SEC now. Rick Barnes at Tennessee, excellent coach. Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, he's a really good coach. Um, Chris Jans at Mississippi State, good coach. Chris Beard at Ole Miss, and I mean, I could go Todd Golden at Florida, Bruce Pearl at I mean, I could go on and on and on. And yes, great coaches plus significant NIL budgets definitely help them make a great, you know, made for one of the most historical years we've ever seen. I mean, they got the most teams out of one conference we've ever seen, you know? So that, I mean, that definitely, everything you said is right on the money. The SEC is becoming a dominant basketball force. One last thing I wanted to hit on, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and actually,
Um,
there was one more thing I thought of too before we get to baseball. What is that?
all right. Well, yeah, one last thing I thought it was pretty cool. The Michigan State fans there in Cleveland did not like it last night. I, however, thought it was pretty cool. The Godfather, Rick Pitino, as many call him, obviously his St. John's team lost in Providence in their round of 32 game, and the Godfather was there supporting his son, Richard Pitino, last night, who is the head coach in New Mexico. Nice little sign of support from Rick. I thought that was pretty cool that he came out to Cleveland the very next day to support the son.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That's a great story there for March Madness. And honestly, there's been some really good stories, including that one that you just mentioned. But definitely agree with you on that with Rick. So good one there, Jerome. And then just one more thing. Do you think John Calipari has kind of elevated his legacy status again based on this run Arkansas has made so far, taking down St. John's and Kansas, kind of back to back?
Well, the mere fact that he's taken back, I think the most impressive element of it is he's taken down Bill Self and Rick Pitino, right?
Yeah.
Those are some legendary coaches in that conversation right there, man. And when I look at it, Cal to me kind of I think wore out his welcome at Kentucky, and Big Blue Nation is not messing around, right? Those are some
Yeah.
intense fans, and they expect greatness. And that loss to Oakland kind of just seemed like it was going to be the natural end for him. But to your point, you're not wrong. I think Cal still got a little bit left in the tank, and I thought he had a really funny line on ESPN. Cal obviously known for being a big one and done guy with the freshmen, right?
Yeah.
And he's done that for years, as long as I can remember. And he was saying how other coaches are complaining about, having to build a new roster with NIL every year. And Cal says, well, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. It doesn't change nothing that I do, So I do agree with you. Cal is probably, this is not that much of an adjustment for him. Arkansas's got plenty of big donors and plenty of NIL money, plenty of rich alumni. So it's a good spot for him to land. And I think the game hasn't passed Cal by, and he can still be very successful in this current era, which has obviously changed and eliminated some of the guys from Cal's era. But Cal has moved on with these new guys, and he's ready to go. And I think he's going to continue succeeding. Now, do I see them getting past the Sweet 16? No, I probably don't. But I think for your first year at a new school to get to the Sweet 16 is a pretty impressive feat that Cal pulled off there.
I would agree with you there. And the other thing, too, I think that was big that you mentioned is his time at Kentucky definitely wore down. But the fact he kind of turned a program around relatively quickly, I think, is a story within itself. All right, let's get to the talk of the town for the end of this week, and that's Major League Baseball. It's going to be starting all on Thursday. The Cleveland Guardians, in particular, they'll be taking on the Kansas City Royals. And, I mean, there's obviously a slew of other games to get to, but how excited are you for baseball season? Let's just get that right off the rip, especially
Well,
after the
I'm
year the
very
Guardians
excited. I'm
had.
actually wearing an older
Mhm.
school thing now. I got my Indians baseball hoodie on right now, actually this evening. But no, I'm excited. I'm a baseball purist, Andrew. I think you knew that, knowing me for a handful of years now. I am a baseball purist. I love it. I could sit down and watch the two worst teams in the league and be entertained. Um, so at this time of year always really excites me. Um, it's a great time of the year. Baseball's swinging in. Getting ready to kick up here in a matter of hours, like you said, 72 hours from when we record this, and uh, you know, March Madness going on. NBA is getting down to the wire. NHL. I mean, this is a great time of the year. But yes, long story short, sorry for the long-winded response. I'm very
Oh, you're
excited.
good. You're good, man. This is a baseball show primarily right now for today. At least the majority of it will be. We're obviously getting the basketball in. We're going to talk some NBA at the very end a little bit as well. But I'm pumped up this year too, and it's not just because the Guardians are coming off what I think was not only a very great showcase in 2024, but I think really a sign of the future. And honestly, I think we got to give Antonetti credit, so much credit, for being the great executive he is. He doesn't have a World Series title yet, but the fact he went from a Hall of Famer and Francona to someone like Stephen Vogt, who was a rookie manager, who now has some experience under his belt, I think we're going to see more confidence from Vogt this year. And a lineup that I think might actually be a lot better than people expect, despite some stupid moves in the offseason. And the rotation, I think, getting healthier. I just can't wait, man. I already have my subscription lined up ready to go for how we're gonna. I mean, obviously, it's still a question mark on how a lot of folks are gonna watch the Guardians, but I am just so pumped up for opening day and all 162 games this year. I think it's gonna be a wild ride in 2025, and I can't wait. And not just for the Guardians, but for everybody else as well, as we'll get to here in a sec.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am excited for the Guardians, cautiously optimistic, I think would be the way I'd put it. I'm not overly thrilled about this lineup, and I don't really know what to expect from this lineup. Obviously, I mean, you know what you're going to get from Jose and Quan. And I think Lane Thomas will have a really good year in his walk year. Besides that, I think there's a lot of question marks in this lineup. I, however, think the pitching is going to be pretty good. I was super worried about the pitching going into this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really was, but I think getting Ortiz from Pittsburgh, they'll fix him and make him even better. And he wasn't horrible last year. Tanner's an ace. I believe that. Gavin needs to bounce back in a big way. And I think naturally he has that physical build you want from a pitcher. So I think there's a good chance that happens. Um, Lively, it's hard not to think that Lively can be good again. I mean, everything says that he probably is going to have a little bit of a regression, but something tells me he's going to be all right. And then Logan Allen, I'm not thrilled about, but How do you not
I'm
give
not
that
either.
guy a
I'm not
roster?
with Allen. I don't
How do
believe
you?
in him at all.
But Andrew, how do you not give that guy a roster spot after the spring he had? He was
I
phenomenal. I
agree with
don't
you
think he's
there.
going to be
Yeah,
any
I
good
agree.
either. But his spring training, he deserved it. Point blank.
I would agree with you there. The one guy I'd say that I have like the most concern about out of spring training is probably Tristan McKenzie because we know how he had some really good stuff when he really got his career going, and then it just kind of came to a halt after the injuries. So that's kind of my biggest concern. But who knows how Tristan McKenzie, if he'll even fit into this rotation the way we may expect. But I'll also say this: we haven't mentioned Shane Bieber yet. I mean, Shane Bieber is going to come back at some point, and if you look at how he pitched last year before he got hurt, he would have probably been a Cy Young candidate if he would have been in the entire 2024 season. And who knows how that series with the Yankees would have gone if that would have been the case. That's really how I look at 2024 and maybe 2025. I'm not saying Shane Bieber is going to be as lights out as that, but I think once he gets back into a groove, I don't see how that can't not necessarily be a possibility.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. And, I think Shane, from everything that I hear out of Goodyear, and I'm sure you're hearing a lot of the same stuff, is he's way ahead of schedule, Andrew. So that's wonderful. If you can get him back for June and have him June, July, August, September, and then for the playoff run that we all hope they make, then yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that's a great point. And you know what? They, if you, I don't, I'm much more bullish on them getting something out of Shane Bieber. Means I think is almost more like with him not having the surgery till August. If you get anything out of Means this season, I think it's a total bonus.
I agree with you on Means completely. And to me, the other thing too is some of the additions that we did get as of late. I think the trade with Colorado to get Nolan Jones is going to be really helpful in terms of the lineup. And there's some guys I think that could take a big step. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with you that there is some concerns in the lineup. You look at a Quan and a Jose, I think we know those are for sures. I think you look at the two hole, that's going to be a little bit of a rotation. Lane Thomas, I think, is going to deliver, and he's probably going to be your third best batter in this lineup. But there's some guys I think that could take a major step. And I'm going to base this somewhat on the playoffs. Brian Rocchio delivered in the postseason last year. I think as a shortstop, he's going to have tremendous potential. I don't think we're going to be seeing him batting 8 and 9 all season long. I think he's going to go up to the 5 and 6 spots more frequently. I think when you look at Kyle Manzardo, I think he's still kind of behind schedule, but I still think he is going to take a big leap this year. But obviously, with no Naylor playing first base, that's going to be a big question mark nowadays with the Arizona Diamondbacks. But having said that, I mean, even though Naylor's not on the roster, I still think there's enough potential where the bats could start to come to life a little bit. And not to mention, I think when David Fry comes back from injury, there's your left-handed batter right there. I mean, you're not your left-handed batter, but your guy that can hit the lefties and ace them really, really well. And we even seen in the playoffs, he did pretty well against some right-handers as well. So I think when Fry gets back, he might not, be the most attractive kind of player in terms of like always being a guy that can hit, but I think that could help. And I think there is enough potential where we see some guys start to shine out of the young crew in particular.
So I do see what you're saying, and I agree with some of it. I actually am very high on Rocchio too this year. I think he's going to have a nice year. I really do. And I agree with you. I don't know if I see him in the middle of like the order of 5 or 6. I think maybe there's your answer in the 2 hole if he starts succeeding in the 9 hole. I do agree that Rocchio is going to have a nice year. Manzardo I think is going to have a nice year too. I don't know though if Kyle Manzardo has home run power. I think he's going to be a guy who can hit a lot of doubles and have like that extra base power, but that power to hit it out of the park, I'm not so sure on. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Only time will tell, obviously. But to your point about Rocchio hitting well in the playoffs last year, Andrew, Manzardo kind of had a nice October himself in his own right.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, he did have a nice October, and he did have a big two-run homer in one of those games late in the postseason. So I believe in Manzardo completely. I think you're right on that. He's probably got a lot more double potential than home run potential. I think you're going to struggle to find that consistent second home run hitter that like Josh Naylor was in the regular season, although he did not deliver in the postseason. But like when I look at a guy like Lane Thomas, can he kind of make up a little bit of that? I think so. And there's one guy I don't think we've necessarily talked about too much yet in terms of the lineup that I think has power potential. but we have to see it on a more consistent basis. Bo Naylor, despite his low batting average overall last year, he had some power on the hits he did get. I think he was fifth or sixth in home runs last year. And not to mention John Kenzie Noel. I think it's possible he could be an Oscar Gonzalez type player where he does not perform the following year. But I still think Noel has the potential to kind of get that swing into full swing.
Yeah, a lot of what you said, again, it's hard for me to disagree with. Now, my opinions on quickly on those topics that you brought to mention. Listen, they 31 home runs is a lot to replace, and they're gonna have to, use a multitude of guys to make up for what they lost in Naylor. Look, Lane Thomas is a guy who, in his walk year, you hope can put it all together, right? Because he's had different flashes of different things in his career, right? Like one year he hit 28 home runs, and then another year he stole a whole bunch of bases, and then one year he hit for a really high average. But this is a guy who's going into his walk year, so for him, hopefully he puts it all together. And quite frankly, for his own personal sake and for the Guardians' sake, they kind of need him to, right? Like they need him to deliver in a big way. And I actually do believe that's going to happen. I think Lane Thomas is going to have a big, big year. Somebody you hadn't touched on yet, Carlos Santana.
Yeah, I didn't touch on Santana. That's my bad.
That's fine. No worries. If you don't mind, I can elaborate for a second here. But
Yeah.
Carlos Santana, for me, it's kind of a personal deal because he was my favorite player growing up, and I love him. Um, so for him to be back kind of brings me those, childhood feelings of baseball and all that good stuff. But if I take my Carlos Santana colored glasses off here, Andrew, and I look at this realistically, I don't know what you're going to get out of Carlos Santana. He is turning 39 very shortly, right around the corner here. He did have a good year with the Twins last year, but it takes, even we saw this, he's been his whole career this way. He takes forever to get going. But then once he does, he's usually a pretty darn good major league bat in the middle of your order. And they're going to need him to because he's probably your cleanup hitter.
I would agree with you on that. I think right now, if I were to construct the lineup, if I was Stephen Vogt, I'd say opening day, maybe I'd go Quan 1. I'd say maybe Rocchio 2, give it a shot, see how it works. Maybe you go, obviously, Jose at 3, Lane at 4. Maybe you go Santana at 5, at 6. You could go the Rocchio or Kyle Manzardo route, and then 7, 8, 9 kind of interchangeable. But, we don't have to go into predictions for the lineup and all that. That's just kind of like a template for what I think we could see going into that first game against KC on Thursday night. Now, having said that, I still think there's a lot of potential out of some of the young guys that I mentioned. Carlos Santana is a guy who has proven it and done it before. And I think fans are going to be excited to see him back at a Progressive Field this year. I certainly will be. But to me, even though we did have some losses, Jimenez obviously I think was a big defensive loss, and I think Naylor was a big power loss. I still think that the Guardians' culture is so good. It's going to be hard for me to expect them to be absolutely disastrous like they kind of were in 2023. I think this season they could build upon what they started last year and at least keep momentum going into maybe next season if it doesn't end up in a World Series chip.
Yeah. On your point on that, I think, to be honest with you, I don't know if you saw it tonight. They're playing an exhibition game at Chase Field in Arizona. And I think with a lefty on the mound tonight for the Diamondbacks, Eduardo Rodriguez, and a lefty on the mound on opening day, I think today's lineup in Arizona is precisely what you're going to end up with on Thursday in Kansas City. And it's Juan Ramirez, Thomas, Santana, Noel, Manzardo, Arias, Naylor, Rocchio. That to me, the fact that they have one exhibition game left after today, they're facing a lefty today. It's the week of. To me, this is Vogt telling you this is my opening day lineup. Now, I know earlier you had touched on John Kenzie Noel, and to me, it's so interesting, right? Because the power is so tantalizing. Like you watch him get a hold of one, dude. There's balls that he hit last year that are still coming down somewhere in the city of Cleveland, right? Like
Yeah.
the power is insane, but to me, if he cannot learn to ever lay off that slider, it's for no good because he's just going to get a full 100% diet of sliders and he's not going to get the fastballs that he can absolutely crush. But if he learns to lay off that slider in the left-handed hitter's batter's box, he is going to be a problem for the AL Central pitchers and everyone across Major League Baseball. But that's a huge if, Andrew. And I don't know, spring training didn't show me any indication. Now, I don't take spring training stats too seriously. I'll preface it with that, but it still didn't show me any indication that he can lay off that slider. But if he learns to lay off that breaking ball, sliders in particular, kill him. If he can do that, we can be in for a big year from John Kenzie. And I don't need, he's a guy who his power does enough for me. I don't need John Kenzie Noel to hit more than 225, 230 because when he's connecting, the ball's going 450 to 500 feet.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you on that. And I think the big thing, too, with John Kenzie Noel that I think we're all going to have to deal with is he's the kind of player, and even if he learns to manage the slider a little bit better, I still think he's a guy that's going to strike out a ton this year. Even if he hits, let's say he hits 25 home runs, I still think he's going to have a high strikeout percentage. And I think that's just what you're going to get out of a player like John Kenzie Noel. Now, to me, if you're winning and you, let's say, go 92-70 or 95-67, that's not necessarily a problem for me. If you look at someone like Elly De La Cruz last year, has great power behind him. He plays for Cincinnati, obviously. Now Terry Francona gets to manage him. But Elly De La Cruz, he struck out a ton last year, but the potential's still there. I think John Kenzie Noel, in terms of being a power bat, the potential's all there, but we're going to have to suffer a little bit because I think at the plate, he is going to suffer.
No, I agree with you. His power. John Kenzie Noel is someone who should have played in like the late 90s and early 2000s with his profile, right? Like, you're 100% right. Even if John Kenzie Noel goes on to have a wonderful year, he's going to K a ton. You're absolutely right about that. And one more last thing that I wanted to hit on, Bo. They kind of need Bo to have a big year. I know you said you're pretty excited for Bo and you think Bo's gonna. They kind of need it, man. Like,
oh no, Bo Naylor's in a prove it year. I need to emphasize that he's in a prove it year. What I'm saying though is he did have some power that I don't think we're talking about enough last year. I think he was fifth on the team in home runs in the regular
no,
season.
I agree with you, and they kind of need him to do that. And I know that he learns a lot from Austin Hedges, behind the plate, and great. Austin Hedges can teach you, he can be a wizard to teach you everything you need to know behind the plate. But boy, don't be taking any offensive tips from that guy because you're just wasting his time and yours. To be quite honest,
if you want to take offensive tips, you talk to Jose Ramirez, you talk to Steven Kwan. You probably talk to Steven Kwan before anybody because of how high his batting percentage could be. And we'll talk about Steven Kwan here in a minute because I have something I wanted to mention about him. But
his contact rate's off the charts. But no, to me, like, look, Bo came up and got a cup of coffee in 2022 in the big leagues. They started him in minor leagues in 2023, came back up, had a nice second half. Last year was pretty abysmal at the plate. Like, yeah, I know the power was there, but it just wasn't consistent enough, Andrew. And I get it. Catcher's not an important position offensively, but they need, like, the way that they specifically are constructed and how they play by the razor thin margins, they need something out of them. There's no two ways about it to me.
I agree with you 100%. They definitely need something out of Bo Naylor. And I wanted to emphasize, despite I think he has power potential, I think it does have to come on a more consistent basis. Despite the fact he was fifth on the team in home runs last season, you have to consider the fact I think his overall batting percentage was 201. That's not going to fly if it goes another year. You got to get that guy to probably, I'd say, 240 minimum, right?
Right. Well, I'd say 225 would be fine. And the only reason I say that is because you look at the modern game and average doesn't matter as much now. Like, it's just the way that the game's turned. And to me, the most important number that a lot of scouts and analytical guys tell you is the OPS or the OPS plus. And I actually used to be vehemently against that, but I believe the OPS is the OPS is important, and it's a big time number. Obviously, on base plus slugging, and I, so if Bo hits 225, but hits for 25 home runs, I'll take 225. It's fine.
All right, Jerome. One more thing before we move off the Guardians for a little bit. We'll kind of get back to them when we go over all 30 teams. But Stephen Kwan, he makes such good contact with the baseball. I was starting to think in my head, he was competing at one point in the middle of the season last year before he kind of had a slump in August for the batting title. And while it didn't end up coming to fruition, obviously Bobby Witt was unreal for Kansas City. But do you think that he could possibly get himself back in the conversation? Because at the end of the day, if he can just do it on a more consistent basis, this guy just does not strike out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to your point, um, I think he can compete for a batting title. What I think messed him up a little bit last year was, yeah, the slump was bad, but the injuries, and that's what worries me about him because he's such a little guy. So his injury, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word. His injury chance, risk. There's what I'm looking for. I apologize. His injury chances and risks are just so much higher because of his body type. But if he's somehow able to put together a 162 game campaign, absolutely Quan can compete for a batting title in my eyes, Andrew.
I would agree with you on that, but obviously there's 162 games to play, and you did mention Kwan's injuries could be a big time factor. But man, he gets on base, and like the movie Moneyball says, does he get on base is always a big question mark. Kwan certainly gets the job done there. All right, let's get right to it. Where I got all my predictions right here. I don't have exact records for all 32 teams, or 30 teams, excuse me, that's the NFL, for all 30 teams yet. But what I do have is I have my prediction for who's going to win each division, who's going to be the bottom team. I have some controversial picks. I have some picks of some dark horse teams that you may expect to make the playoffs and may not. So we're just going to go from there. I do have 6 teams from each conference as well. Are you ready? Or not conference, league. What am I
There you
saying,
go.
Jerome? What am I saying? Each league.
Absolutely,
I got
Andrew.
football on the mind, and I'm trying to get off football right now.
Well, let me hear what you got, man. Go ahead and shoot it at me. Shoot it straight, buddy.
All right, AL East. Let's start there. Baltimore Orioles. I have winning the division. My second place team, Boston Red Sox. And I think they make the playoffs this year. I think they end a couple of years of a drought there. They haven't been good in a little bit, but I think they're going to kind of break the barrier this year. The rotation got better. And of course, how can you forget one of the biggest additions this offseason in Alex Bregman at third base? So I have them in second place.
Okay.
Third place, I have the New York Yankees, but I have them missing the playoffs. I just think the New York Yankees, with a lot of what we've seen from not just the changes in the lineup, but also from the pitching. Obviously, Aaron Judge is going to be Aaron Judge, but when you look at the injuries from Giancarlo Stanton, he's not going to be as consistent, I think, as he was in the postseason overall last year. And I think a big loss is Juan Soto. It was kind of a two-man lineup, and they don't have their main guy in Garrett Cole, so I can't buy into the Yankees. So I'm actually going to put them at 3. They'll still finish with a winning record and above 500, but I don't have them making the playoffs. 4, I have the Toronto Blue Jays. Believe it or not, I think Andres Jimenez will be a nice defensive addition for them. And I still think they have some good pieces, but overall, are they going to be competing for the title in that division? I don't think so. And then at 5, rounding out the bottom is Tampa Bay. I just think the Rays are kind of in a really big time rebuilding situation. I think Kevin Cash is a great manager, obviously learning from Terry Francona, but I don't know how the Rays compete in this division. And plus, they're playing in a AAA ballpark this year. I mean, the Savannah Bananas are outbeating them in ticket sales in Tampa Bay right now. So to finish off, I'll go Orioles, Red Sox. Those 2 teams make the playoffs. Yankees, Blue Jays, Rays. What are your thoughts?
Okay. So some interesting selections from you there, and I'm interested to give you my thoughts on that right here. Well, let's start. Orioles. I mean, to me, yes, I could see them winning this division. Absolutely, Andrew, because they have a budding group of young stars, But is there enough support pitching wise? Grayson Rodriguez is already hurt. You got the guy from Japan whose name's escaping me right now, who they gave 13 million to. They're counting on the
Yogi
ageless wonder.
Sugano.
Yes, sir. That's it. Thank you. They're counting on the ageless wonder Charlie Morton to continue just being excellent. And obviously, when you get into your 40s, eyebrows start to raise, right? Questions start to get asked. Um, the lineup to me is no doubt great. I think Gunner's only going to get better. Adley's only going to get better. Westberg's really good. Jackson Holiday's an interesting one because he was so hyped up being the kid of Matt Holliday. Is he going to be great? I don't know, but they need him to at least be good. Colby Mayo's knocking on the door. Heston Kjerstad. I mean, the list goes on and on. The lineup's great. I do have questions about their pitching. But do I think it's crazy for you to say they're going to win a division? Not by any means. Boston, my thoughts there. Going to be a good lineup. Alex Bregman's going to light up the world at Fenway Park. If there is a ballpark made for a player, it's Fenway Park for Alex Bregman. I think Raffy's going to be Raffy. They need Yoshida to bounce back in a big way. Casas needs to have a big year. I think they have a good lineup offensively. Their pitching, Crochet's great. However, Crochet can't stay healthy. So I do have questions about that there. They're a sexy pick to make the playoffs. I don't personally have them in the playoffs, but I see why so many folks do. Real quick, Yankees. You know what? Everyone says they're gonna not make the playoffs. That's been a popular opinion lately. I think they probably sneak it as a wild card, but to your point, I mean, let's not act like they got rid of nobody. They got rid of the highest paid player free agent contract ever. That is going to be a big loss one way or the other. I don't care if you supplemented it with Goldie and you supplemented it with Belly. It's going to be a huge loss.
But Bellinger and Goldschmidt aren't Juan Soto. I
No,
mean,
that's what I'm
neither
saying.
one of them are. I don't think you're going to just replace that. And I get it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're not going to replace Juan Soto. And who's been the most consistent bat when you look at their lineup? I think you might say their second best batter is Stanton, and he's been pretty much just getting banged up overall in terms of the offseason. So, I mean, who's your third best guy? I mean, I get Goldschmidt's good. I'm not going to argue you on that. But is it going to be Jazz Chisholm? When is he proven to be an ace guy in the lineup?
No, I agree with you. And like I said, I don't think Belly and Goldschmidt and Chisholm and all those guys are going to make up for Soto's production forever. And I have a big question, who is going to protect Judgy? Look, Aaron Judge, we can sit here and talk for hours about how he stinks in the postseason, but the guy carries the pinstripes every year in the regular season. And who is going to protect him? That's a big question mark to me. So I do wonder about that lineup. I think the Yankee pitching is going to be all right. Fried's really good. I think Clark Schmidt's underrated. Luis Gil's going to have to be counted on very heavily now. And from what I'm hearing, I guess Carrasco's going to be in that rotation. Whoa, boy, we saw that experiment last year. That's no fun.
As of right now, I'm actually looking at the rotation for the Yankees projected. And this is on MLB.com, so this is according to Major League Baseball, some of the experts there. They have Cookie pitching at 5. And for a Yankees starting rotation, that might be kind of concerning. That's why I don't have them making the playoffs. I agree with you, Judge is going to be Judge, but who's going to protect him? And this rotation is really a question mark. Cookie Carrasco is not in the rotation if they have a guy like Garrett Cole out there.
Oh, absolutely not. I agree with you. And the Rays, I look, it's hard to count them out entirely. They did what they typically do. They traded everybody away and they bring in their next crop of prospects. I think there's a lot to be excited about in Junior Caminero, though. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Danny Jansen will give them a nice little bit of boost of offense behind the plate. They're going to need Yandy Diaz to have a big year. They're going to need Josh Lowe, Brandon Lau. But I think the Rays pitching is going to be excellent. I just have no faith. As much as I just gave those guys credit, I have no faith their lineup's going to hit consistently. And I think it's going to have to be the Junior Caminero MVP type show if they're going to compete this year. I'll agree with you there.
And as I said too, the Blue Jays are actually my fourth place team. I have the Rays finishing at the bottom. I just think I don't like that they're playing at a AAA ballpark. That concerns me just based off the fact that AAA ballparks aren't really designed to have major league teams there. We can get into that with the Athletics later. But that concerns me about the Rays. And also, I just think like they traded Arozarena in the middle of the season last year in kind of a weird way. And the Rays, despite I think having one of the better cultures in Major League Baseball, to me it just feels like there's just something shaky about this unit. It doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is. So to me, I'll round that up again. I'll go Orioles winning the division, Red Sox second place as a wild card. I'll take the Yankees at 3. I'll go Blue Jays at 4, and then at 5, I'll take the Tampa Bay Rays there as we head over to the AL Central. We did talk a lot about the Guardians. Obviously, this is a Cleveland-based podcast, so we have to. But as I look at my predictions for the AL Central, believe it or not, I don't have the Guardians winning this division. You know who I have, Jerome?
Tigers?
I have the Kansas City Royals
Okay.
coming up and winning the division this year. And that's mainly because of their rotation. When you look at Cole Reagan, Seth Lugo, Michael Waka, you look at those guys alone. Those are 3 solid starters. Obviously, Lorenzen's okay. Is he going to be someone that really holds down the fort? I don't know. Bubic, if you look at the projected rotation, those guys are kind of shaky, but I really like their first 3 guys in their rotation right off the rip. And Bobby Witt Jr. had the batting title last year. So that's already a significant amount of offense that I think he's going to be able to repeat. You look at a veteran like Perez, who's still on the lineup. That's going to be a guy who's going to be able to get some major hits for you. And he's a catcher, by the way, as well. So we talked about the importance of the catcher position. Perez is a consistent hitting catcher, and I don't think he gets as much credit as that he deserves. I don't know who necessarily will be their leadoff guy. It might be Jonathan India. I don't necessarily think that's a bad pickup for Kansas City. I kind of like that for the way they play offense. So if it's Jonathan India kind of leading them off, I like that addition. And then you have Bobby Witt kind of there to protect India if he gets on base. So for me, I think Kansas City on paper has the better unit out of all 5 teams in the Central. So I'm going to take Kansas City to win the division. But I have the Guardians as a wild card team. They are my number 2. And the reason I have the Guardians there is because I think the rotation's going to be a lot better this year. But it was the big question mark of last season. We obviously didn't have a rotation in full swing. You obviously have the horses in the bullpen. But damn it, you're not going to be able to rely on those horses in the bullpen for all 162 games like you were last year. Gaddis, at some point, as good as he was last year, is probably going to have a couple bad games. Emmanuel Clase in the regular season, for as lights out as he was, he's probably going to have a couple bad games this season. I look at a guy like Cade Smith, a guy who I think has high potential in the bullpen, maybe could be the future closer of this team if Clase ends up taking a downward spiral, which does concern me about Clase, but I'm not going to jump the bullet there yet on that one. I think Clase is going to be okay. But that kind of concerns me a little bit. I think Cade Smith is going to have a good year. I think Gaddis is. I'm not so sure about Clase. He kind of was streaky in 2023 after having a hot 2022. I'm worried that's going to happen in 2025, even though I still think he's an excellent closer and a great one. Don't get me wrong. So that kind of concerns me. You can't ride this bullpen. And then 4 and 5 are the biggest question marks in this rotation. And when you get Bieber back, but it's still when you get Bieber back. I'm sold on Bibee as a number 1. I'm sold that Gavin Williams could be a great number 2, maybe another number 1 someday if he has the stuff I think he has in him. But the rotation is a big question mark for me still. It was the weakness of last year, but I think that's going to be better this year. I think the bullpen might be slightly weaker. And then the lineup, there's still question marks, but the culture's so good on this organization. That's why I'm going with the Guardians at the number 2 spot. But I think Kansas City just rounds it up a little bit better. So I have Kansas City winning the division. I'm going to have the Guardians in second place. My other wild card team at number 3, despite some losses this year, is the Minnesota Twins. I think the Twins have a good enough culture where they can sustain a really good winning season. I think Rocco Baldelli, even though a lot of people are questioning why the Twins kept him after a late season collapse, I think Rocco Baldelli is still a pretty good manager. So I think they have a good culture established in place. Obviously, I believe it was their team president that took the fall there in Minnesota. But I look at some of the guys when you look at that lineup in Minnesota right now. Their rotation kind of streaky, but I still think it's going to be relatively well. But I look at Minnesota's lineup. Obviously, they lose a guy like Carlos Santana, but if you look at some of the projections here, at number 3, right off the rip, you have Byron Buxton. And Byron Buxton is a very consistent hitter. And I think he's a guy that you can expect to perform again and again this year. Willie Castro riding up the bottom. That's not really too big of one. Man, the leadoff hitter there, Matt Wallner, is he going to be that efficient? I don't know. Carlos Correa could be at number 2. Obviously, Buxton you have for protection there. But Minnesota, to me, I still feel like they have a good culture there overall. And I think that's going to help the Twins kind of get back to the playoffs. At 4, I'm going to have the Detroit Tigers. You just can't do the whole bullpen thing in the postseason again. I think Hinch is a great manager. I think Skubal is a great pitcher. But the hitting on that lineup is not sustainable, I think, for another possible playoff run. I do think the Tigers fight to get to be above 500. And I think because the White Sox are in the division, that might help all 4 of these teams as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's going to help out. So I'm going to take Detroit at 4, kind of losing some steam a little bit, but I think the culture is still there. And obviously, as I mentioned, Chicago White Sox are going to round up the bottom. They're going to have another disastrous season. Will they be better than 41 and 121? Probably. But, I mean, you could probably make a legitimate argument they could go 40 and 122 or maybe 39 and 123. They on paper look awful yet again. And I don't see that getting better anytime soon. So I'll go Kansas City winning the division, Guardians number 2, Minnesota 3, Guardians and Twins are your wild card, Detroit at 4, and I'll take the White Sox obviously to round up the bottom because they're just so awful.
Yeah, my thoughts on that. Kansas City's going to be good. Absolutely. Bobby Witt's a superstar. I mean, not even in the making anymore. He is. He's a bona fide superstar. To your point, and you talked about Salvador Perez pretty extensively, he doesn't get enough credit. And to me, he's a guy who should find Cooperstown someday for what he's done for the last 10 years at the catcher position where nobody hits anymore. That guy should be Hall of Fame bound. I think that rotation is good. 4 and 5 are question marks to me. I'll agree with you there. I think India is going to be really good there. I think he's going to end up leading off. I think he's going to have a great year. Jonathan India is too good to be a utility player like the Reds were going to plan on using him. Guy's an everyday player. He needs to play, and that'll be a big addition for them. But the problem is Singer went the other way, and Singer was pretty efficient for them the last few years. Guardians, I'm not going to feel the need to really elaborate because I kind of gave my thoughts earlier. But you did touch on the bullpen, Andrew. And to me, yeah, you cannot be relying on that bullpen as you were last year. I think Paul Sewald's someone whose name we didn't mention yet, but he is going to be a big factor. And I think he's probably going to end up impacting this team greatly. Someone else who I think a lot of people have forgotten about, Trevor Stephan was Class A's Robin to Batman a few years ago. He's going to be back from his Tommy John surgery sooner rather than later. Trevor Stephan could go on to play a big role.
I agree with you. Trevor Stephan could bounce back. The thing is, though, in 2023, Trevor Stephan did not look like the 2022 Trevor Stephan. That leads me to have some concerns about if he could bounce back and be the Trevor Stephan we saw shut down everybody in 2022. He was probably close to Emmanuel Clase getting to a 0.63 ERA. I'm not saying he wasn't, but he was so shut down a few years back. And that's going to be a nice addition to the bullpen as well. And to top it off, you look at a guy like Gaddis and you look at a guy like Cade Smith. If that's 4 aces in the bullpen right off the rip, and they have the kind of sustained success that they had last season, that's going to be really good for the Guardians bullpen. I don't disagree with you there. So I think you're kind of adding a little bit of depth to what you could do on the mound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thoughts on the bottom 3 teams?
Yeah, one last hit on the Guardians, though.
Yeah.
Andrew, Jacob Junis was a good signing for them. I think he's going to end up playing a nice role. He's someone who can start for you when needed. He's someone who can relieve come out of the pen for you when needed. And they got him at a very inexpensive cost. I think Jacob Junis is going to have a big time role on our team this year. My thoughts on the other 3 teams. The Twins, to me, it's one simple question. What's the health of Royce Lewis? What's the health of Byron Buxton? And what's the health of Carlos Correa?
I didn't mention Royce Lewis. That's a good one.
They're useless. If those 3 are healthy, yeah, there's a damn good chance they could win this division. That's the way I look at it. To me, it all comes down to the health of Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa, and Royce Lewis. And they have shown year in and year out the inability to stay healthy now. And I think it's very frustrating for Twins fans. Um, I was at a Twins spring training game this year because you know, sorry for rambling, but my parents
You're
snowbird down in
good.
Fort Myers. So I had an opportunity to sit 6 rows behind home plate. And I was talking to several Twins fans down there, and they all said the same thing to me. Our season comes down to Byron, Carlos, and Royce's health. And it's true. The Tigers are interesting because they did add some starting pitching. Um, they're counting on a bunch of guys to bounce back. Casey Mize, former #1 overall pick. What is Kenta Maeda going to give them? That's been a disastrous free agent contract so far. They did add in the bullpen though, and Tommy Kahnle's someone who can get big outs and has done it at a high level for a long, long time. Good add. I agree with you on their lineup. I'm not crazy about it. I think Glaber's going to have a really nice year for them, though. And I think Glaber probably ends up leading off against lefties, hitting fifth against righties. And I think he definitely helps their offense as a whole. Um, I don't know, you know, Riley Green kind of probably needs to take a step for them to be really good again, like step from all-star to probably superstar. I don't know if he has that next gear, if that's going to happen. That'll be something that remains to be seen. And the White Sox, Andrew, you kind of hit on everything. There's no point of me wasting my breath or your time on your show to talk about them any further.
I don't think anybody in their right mind should talk Chicago White Sox baseball on any platform, honestly. They don't
Well,
deserve it. They're a disgrace of an organization. And if you're a White Sox fan, I truly feel bad for you. Because in
yeah,
2021, everyone thought the future was ahead for that organization. And then ever since 2021, it's just all become a shell of itself. And it's laughable. We all thought the Oakland A's of 2023 were going to be the worst team of all time. And the 2024 White Sox said, hold my beer. And
it's
the
a joke.
2025 White Sox might say to the 2024 White Sox, hold my beer. Let's see. What was it? 3-22 they started last year. They might be 1-25 to start the season off. I'm dead
It,
serious.
it's going to be another long, ugly, miserable summer for the folks on the south side of Chicago. Make no mistake about it. You're right. And again, there's no point in taking any more time to talk about them.
I agree. As I said, we don't want to talk about them on any more platforms. So let's just move off the Sox and get to the AL West. This was actually the hardest the division for me, the hardest division to pick. Who was
Totally
going to
up for
win it?
grabs, in my opinion.
It really is. But I still picked the Houston Astros. And the reason I picked the Houston Astros is just because of their sustained success. They know how to win this division. They've done it the last 7 years now, 8 years now, I think it is. They know how to win this division. No one has proven to me since that they know how to win this division. So I have to go with the Houston Astros because of that. I still think you look at a guy like Framber Valdez. He could come back. He could be an ace pitcher for you. He could win you a ton of games. I look at a guy like Spencer Arrighetti. He's kind of streaky last year, but can he be a good pitcher in the 3 spot? I think so. Obviously, you have Jose Altuve. Even though he's getting up there, he's still a really good leadoff hitter. You look at some of the other guys on their lineup, it's a good culture overall. It's a well-run organization. Until anyone proves it to me otherwise, I think I have to go with the Houston Astros winning this division. I have the Seattle Mariners at 2, and I want to pick the Mariners so bad, but I can't. And I think they got a good addition this year when you look at the fact they now have Luis Castillo on the lineup there. But to me, I still think something doesn't jive about Seattle, and I think it's just because they've been so streaky over the last few years because they've had so much potential that just slipped through the cracks. So I can't pick the Mariners, but I am going to pick them as the second best team in this division. I think they fight for a wild card spot, but I think the Twins or the Guardians or someone else that's like fighting for a spot just overtakes it. 3, I'm going to go with the Oakland Athletics, or just the Athletics now, as they like to be called. I think the Athletics kind of got better in the offseason. They've shown last year that even though 2023 was a mess, they significantly improved in 2024. And they really did, I think, kind of overshadow the fact that they were not the absolute worst team of all time. The White Sox proved it for them. So to me, I think the Athletics might be a little bit better. They're still a below 500 team, though, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a team that wins 72, 73 games. I think the Athletics have it in them. And I think a guy like JP Sears, for example, he kind of started to pitch better later in the season last year. So to me, I think that gives me a little bit more confidence that the Athletics are going to win a few more games than people expect. Doesn't mean they're going to be very good. I don't think they will be. And they're also playing in a AAA ballpark, which probably won't help them. I'm going to go with number 4 being the LA Angels. Despite Mike Trout playing different positions now, I don't think you look at that rotation and you look at that lineup, there's nothing that really shines with the LA Angels at all. I can't pick them to really do anything or have a successful season. I just can't. That's why I even picked the Athletics over them. There's nothing about the Angels that really gets me excited. And that rounds up at the bottom for me. Of course, when I look at the last team in this division, I don't know why. Something about Texas just seems streaky to me. I think it was kind of a good year they had in 2023. They still have some good players there, but to me, I think the Athletics kind of take a big jump. And obviously, Bochy's a great manager, but I don't know if I like what the Texas Rangers are packing. What do you think?
Um, yeah, it's hard to bet against the Astros. I'll agree with you there for one. I mean, they've proven that they can win without cheating, I guess we could say.
Yeah,
Um, Framer Valdez in a contract years, he's going to be really, really good because he's going to be looking to get that next big payday for free agent pitching, and it's going to come because he's going to have a great season, I believe. Your two Seattle Mariners. I know you mentioned Luis Castillo. He's been around there for a while. That rotation to me is bar none the best rotation in baseball, led by Logan Gilbert. Kirby's a stud. Brian Woo's amazing. Luis Castillo. I carry on and on and on. I don't know where the hell they're getting their offense from. I don't see it. I mean,
I think I said earlier that I don't trust their rotation. I meant I don't trust their lineup. I'm sorry. That was my bad.
oh, no worries.
Yeah.
But their rotation's remarkable. But unless they're winning 1-0, how the hell are they going to win in games, Andrew? I mean, their big off-season addition was Donovan Solano. He's 35 and he's a platoon bat. I mean, good God, I don't know where they're getting it. Um, the A's, I know a lot of people like them to make the playoffs and this
I
and
don't
that.
like them to make the playoffs. I think they're better than they've been, though.
No, no, trust me, I heard what you said. I'm just saying, generally speaking, I hear a lot of folks talking about that. A's going to win the division, this, that. I think the A's will be significantly improved. I think the A's are actually going to be over 500 this year. I'm with a lot of these people. They are, um, you know, look, they gave out their big, which is ridiculous. Their biggest free agent contract ever was only 67 million. Um, you know, he's going to lead the rotation, but they're going to need. I think Lawrence Butler's going to have a big year. Bleday's going to have a big year, but I still don't know about their lineup. But I'm going to go ahead and trust JP Sears and Luis. Why is his name escaping me? Who starter? Oh, help me out, Andrew.
Escaping me too, man. I can't think of it.
Oh boy.
Looks like I have to go to our good friend MajorLeagueBaseball.com to double check.
Oh, I apologize.
Nope,
For
I have to apologize too, man. We should know this off the top of our head, shouldn't we? Severino.
Yes, Luis Severino. Why could I not think of his name? My God. I apologize to you
I
and
need to
your
apologize too. I should have had that off the top of my head. I didn't. So
yeah. Anywho,
JP Sears was the big highlight for me, and I couldn't think of his name, and that's why I was like, oh wow.
yeah. To me though, Sevy and Sears are gonna have a big year leading that rotation. Mason Miller at the back end is disgusting, but like I said, I'm believing in the A's. I don't know. The Angels, they're like the White Sox. I'm not talking about them. I'm sorry. I got nothing to say. They
If Mike
spend a ton.
Trout wasn't there, there'd be absolutely nothing to talk about with the Angels. But because Mike Trout's there, there's a lot to talk about with the Angels.
Yeah, I mean, but to me, I don't know what they're going to get out of Trout this year. Moving him to right field, is that going to help him stay healthy? Like, should Mike Trout be a permanent DH at this point? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. They're count on some bounce back candidates. I guess I do like O'Hoppe. He's a nice young catcher. Yusei Kikuchi, they gave a boatload of money to. He pitched really well down the stretch for Houston. I don't know if he's an ace. You know, to me, the Angels are going to be like one of the worst teams in baseball. And then the Rangers, I'm surprised you have at 5. I'm
I
shocked.
shouldn't.
Like,
I might actually switch that to the. I should probably put them at 4. I shouldn't have them at 5. I agree with you when I really
to
think
me, the
about it.
Rangers might be a borderline playoff team. Like they have a
Yeah,
veteran group though, but if they stay healthy, like
they were just so
let's not.
bad last year. That's why I'm kind of streaky with them. But they're
Yeah, I
probably not
get.
LA Angels bad.
Well, but I get that. Trust me. But let's not forget about a guy by the name of Jacob DeGrom, who, if he comes back healthy, could be the best pitcher in baseball. Andrew, like he's that good.
Mhm.
Um, Health's a huge question now. Adolis Garcia, I think, is going to have a huge, huge bounce back year. Seager's going to be Seager. Semien will still be good. I think they're young guys though. Wyatt Torregas, or sorry, excuse me, Evan Carter and um, the Wyatt, not Torre. I can't think of his name either. God, I'm bad. I apologize. Anyway, those guys need to step up big. But I think the Rangers could potentially threaten for a wild card if they stay healthy. That's going to be the big question because they're a veteran group.
You're probably right on the Rangers. I'll probably move them up to 3 and move the A's and Angels back down. Maybe the Mariners. Oh man, it's tough for me with Texas because I really didn't think about them too much until
Well,
I decided to
I'm going
make
to
my
tell you right
projections.
now, to
I
me,
forgot about the Grom. I forgot, like, oh man, that could be a division winning team. They might be better than the Astros, but to me, until the Astros prove otherwise, why should I bet against them? You know?
no, I agree with you. But I think to me, overall, the West is the toughest division. Like, there are some really, really good, the West and the Central. Both, you know, the Central, you got 4 teams that can compete. And I think the same with the West. And Wyatt Langford, who was who I was thinking of, his name came back to me. And I didn't use the Google machine, just so your audience knows. But look,
Yeah, I do use a machine, so
I do too sometimes, but for that one, I didn't need it. But no, Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter both need to bounce back and stay healthy for sure. And like I said, I do believe in Adolis Garcia having a big year. So to me, 4 of those teams can win it. The Angels are entirely irrelevant. That's the way I look at it.
all right. That is 15 of 30 teams. Let's get over to the National League. Lots to talk about over there, and what I think might be the most competitive division in all of the sport this upcoming year is the NL East. I don't know if you'll agree with me on that, Jerome, but I'll get your thoughts on a second. But I'll just go right off the rip with my predictions on that division. I have the New York Mets winning that division with the addition of Juan Soto. Still some questions in their rotation, but when you have Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, who's been coming to life for them as of last year, and Pete Alonso in that lineup, hard for me offensively to kind of root against them. That's probably the best offensive in that division. So I'm going to take the Mets to finish in first place this year. I'm going to take the Phillies to finish in second place. You have Ranger Suarez coming back. He is going to be tremendous, I think, for the Phillies yet again. And it's going to be, can they stay on a consistent basis? I think that's going to be the big question mark that surrounds the Philadelphia Phillies. Third place, I'm going to have the Atlanta Braves, and I think those are your 3 playoff teams right off the rip. The Atlanta Braves are going to have Ronald Acuna Jr. back, and you look at the pitching depth that they have. Spencer Strider will also be back. You look at a guy like Matt Olson in the lineup as well, who could be an offensive juggernaut for you. I like the Atlanta Braves to be back in the playoffs and in the conversation for the division. And I really think this division is going to come down to the wire. I think like the Mets might win like 98 games, and the the Phillies might win like 95, and then like the Braves win 93 or something crazy like that. At 4, I have the Nationals. I think they kind of bounce back into things a little bit. They've been improving over the last couple of years, but I still think they kind of have World Series hangover, so they're not ready to take the next big leap. And then obviously, just as irrelevant as the Angels and the White Sox are the Miami Marlins. What do you think?
Yeah, I think to your point, this will be the most competitive division in baseball as far as the top. It won't be the best division in baseball because just like the AL Central, the White Sox will weigh it down. Just like the AL West, the Angels will weigh it down. The Marlins will weigh this division down. I mean, Andrew, consider myself to be a pretty knowledgeable baseball mind and baseball opinion, and I consider you the same. We'd have to sit here for days before we could probably know who the hell the Marlins are going to have out there.
Cal Quantrill is one person.
Well, in their lineup, look,
Well, that too, yeah.
Sandy Alcantara's coming back. He's a superstar. Guy won't make it past the 4th of July. There, they'll deal him 100%.
They'll probably
So
deal him in April. No, the
hey,
Marlins.
they did with the Rise last year.
Yeah.
Who's to put it past them? You're not
Marlins
wrong.
are known for historically tanking when we're 1 week into the season.
So yeah, that's it's tough, right? Because they're gonna weigh it down. The Mets Phillies Braves race will be really interesting to watch. Mets lineup loaded, pitching got questions about. Braves lineup loaded, but that group's all getting a little bit older. Pitching loaded. Phillies lineup's getting old. This is probably their last crack at it. So for that reason, I think they'll end up winning it because this is probably the last year that group's all together before they're going to have to start moving pieces and getting rid of contracts and guys getting to free agency again. And pitching loaded there. Nationals, I think, are going to be good. I really do. Um, like good in the sense they'll take the next step. Will they be over 500? I don't know, but they'll be much better. And it's going to be tough for them because they are going to have to they're going to have to play the Phillies Braves and Mets combined 39 times, so it's going to be tough for them. But yeah, I expect this to be competitive and I can see it going down to the end. But
I
I think the
think
Phillies are going to come away with it.
yeah, I'm with the Mets on this one just based on their offensive production. I think they're going to be able to get out of that lineup. But I think the Phillies come very close, and I still can't sleep on the Braves, man. I mean, at the end of the day,
Oh,
Ronald
oh,
Acuna Jr. is a superstar in the Major League Baseball, and he's going to be fully healthy. So the Braves could win the division based on that alone if he produces enough for you. You have Matt Olson for protection there too. I I mean, honestly, out of those three teams, any one of them could win the division. I'm just
I
going
was
with the
just
Mets based on name recognition.
I was just gonna say that, man. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Phillies,
Yeah,
but for me, if any of the three of them won it, I'm not gonna be surprised in October. You know, look, I mean, and all three are well-run organizations, and I like all three managers a lot. I like Snicker, I like Rob Thompson in Philly, and I like Mendy in New York.
absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. They're all well-run organizations. And, my second team is the Mets, so that's probably that little bit of bias coming from me too. Rooting for the Mets
No,
this year.
Andrew, I don't think so. I mean, look, if again, I'm going to go with the Phillies, but the Mets are going to be really, really
Yeah,
good. Mania, if he pitches as good as he did last year, he's an ace. You know, David Peterson was great down the stretch for him. Kodai Senga's coming back. What they're going to get out of him is a question mark. But that 1 through 4, and I don't know what way they'll work it, but I would imagine they'll go Lindor, Soto, Alonso, probably Nimmo, and then Vientos. Really, that 1 through 5 is, oh, that's a murderer's row for any pitcher.
I would agree with you on that one. That's this three. The incredible hitting staff that New York has right now is going to be, I think, a big problem for a lot of teams, not just in the NL East, but across Major League Baseball. Moving on to the NL Central, which is by far the worst division in the sport. However, I think we see some significant improvements from some teams in particular. I'll start off with my first place team here. I picked in first place the Milwaukee Brewers once again, primarily because I really trust the Brewers bullpen. It's definitely the second best bullpen in baseball, excluding the Guardians, of course. Um, their hitting is still really good. If they have Yelich healthy for a year, I don't think they lose a wild card series like they did last year. They're incredibly well managed. And to me, the thing with the Brewers is they don't necessarily need to win a lot of games to win this division. The Chicago Cubs might have slightly got better, and which is why I have them in second place right now. But there's still a lot of flaws the Cubs have before I consider them any kind of contending threat. In third place, actually, at the Cincinnati Reds. I think you see Ellie De La Cruz take another big step in the right direction. Obviously, now they have Brady Singer in the rotation. I think that's going to help. And Cincinnati was desperate for pitching. They got a guy that knows pitching. It's Terry Francona. I think his presence is going to help elevate Cincinnati. And having said this, by the way, as well, I'm not picking either um, the, excuse me, the lost my train of thought there for a second. But second place, as I said, Chicago. I'm not picking the Chicago Cubs or the Cincinnati Reds to make the playoffs. But having said that, I think the Reds take a leap in the right direction because I just think Terry Francona's presence alone speaks a lot to baseball players in the league. And I think that's going to help Cincinnati tremendously. 4 and 5 was kind of a battle for me because St. Louis, to me, they have a better culture. I kind of think St. Louis, between them and Pittsburgh, kind of have a battle for 4 and 5. The reason I'm going to go with St. Louis 4 and Pittsburgh 5, though, is just because the Cardinals have a better culture. I mean, the Pirates, if it wasn't for Paul Skeens, we're not talking about.
Yeah. In this division, I agree with you, is going to be the worst. The Brewers, you're probably right. They'll figure out a way to win it. I do think though, losing Willie Adames is a killer, right? I mean,
Yeah. But the Brewers don't need to win 90 games to probably win this division, though. They could win probably 85.
that's true. That's true. But the presence of Willie Adames in the lineup, Yelich, he falls into the Correa, Buxton, Royce Lewis thing for me, Andrew. I don't know how healthy Yelich is going to stay. I wouldn't really bet on him staying healthy for the duration of the season. And the Brewers did virtually nothing this offseason. So that's where I do have question marks with them. They lost to the Mets last year, obviously on P. Alonso's heroics. They also, I don't, I'm not as high on their bullpen as you because Devin Williams is a huge loss. And they didn't do it.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about Devin Williams going to New York, but it's still a very well managed and coached bullpen.
I agree with you, but I'm going to push back on it a little bit because to me, you can't lose your best relief pitcher and your best all around offensive player and things just going to be status quo. I think it's tough. It's really tough. You're really threading the needle. They're like the adult version of us where they always don't want to spend a damn dime and try to thread that needle. But I mean, at least we spent a little bit compared to them. Um,
I would agree with you there. The Brewers
the
are
one thing that does
the
excite me about the Brewers is I think Jackson Cherio is a total superstar in the making. That kid, I think, is going to be phenomenal. And I'll be watching the Brewers to watch Jackson Cherio because I think he's going to be that damn good. Um, but
Rio
and
is going to be good.
I think the Brewers are going to probably end up winning the division based on it being a horrible division. The Cubs, they made some moves. They got involved in with Kyle Tucker can't be understated. He's a 5-tool superstar player. That's a big move. Imanaga's an ace. Justin Steele's really good. I like the Cubs this year. I think they're going to be pretty good, and I think the Cubs probably will qualify for the postseason. Uh, Now they did lose Bellinger, but it doesn't really matter because Tucker's going to be better than Bellinger. The Reds, yeah, there's a lot of exciting young talent there. We'll see outside of Ellie. Ellie's going to be really good, I think. Which one of those other guys are going to step up? Is it going to be Novelli Marte? Is it going to be Christian Encarnacion Strand? Spencer Steer is very underrated. He's a darn good stick to have in the lineup. Hunter Green, I think, can he put it all together? That's the question we've been waiting for on Hunter Green for a while now. He's really good, but can he put it all together? Um, that remains to be seen. The Reds will be fun. I think they'll be about 500. The Cardinals, they do have a great culture. If they bounce back, it wouldn't totally shock me because they also get to play in a crappy division all year. But the Nolan saga hanging over their head, I think they're the last place team. And then Pittsburgh's the NL version of the Mariners to me. They have an outstanding rotation. I mean, Andrew Heaney's pretty good. He's going to be their 4 or 5. Skeens is, we don't really need to go down that road. He's amazing. Jared Jones is really good. Bubba Chandler's coming soon. Pittsburgh, I think, Andrew, is the version of the Mariners. If they're going to win, it's going to have to be a whole hell of a lot of 1-0 games because outside of Brian Reynolds, there's a lot of question marks. Can O'Neal Cruz take that next step? What's Kutch got left in the tank? Does Tommy Pham have anything left in the tank? I don't know.
I think O'Neal Cruz will take the next step, but I still think that lineup is garbage. It's just
It's not a
there's
great
nothing.
lineup.
It's
It, it,
not a
it
good lineup. They'll give you the pitching. I picked them five, but I guess you're probably right about St. Louis finishing last. But I don't know. It's culture for me. The Cardinals to me have a
the
great
Cardinals,
culture.
their Cardinal way is a real thing. No, there's
Yeah,
no doubt about it. But to me, Pittsburgh and Seattle are very comparable places. They have excellent rotations, but I mean, how many 1-0 games can you win before the other team finally breaks through against your pitching?
and the thing too that St. Louis does have offensively that Pittsburgh doesn't is they have a really good leadoff hitter. Lars Nootbaar, if he's the lead hitter again, I think he's going to get you a bunch of doubles in a game and score some runs for you if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. But still, there like is their best batter being probably their leadoff guy? Is that going to be like something that could be sustainable for them? No.
I,
So I
I
think
don't
you're
know.
probably right on the Cardinals.
And the other question there too is Nolan Arenado didn't have a great year last year. He's going to be there. He's probably going to hit fourth on opening day, but how much longer is Nolan there? And when can they get this like giant shadow that's hanging over their head that is Nolan Arenado like moved on somewhere where he wants to be?
I would agree with you on that as well. We'll move on to the NL West to wrap things up with Major League Baseball talk. And I think this division's a juggernaut too. At least they have some teams that are juggernauts. I'm going to have San Diego step down this year. I think the Dodgers easily win this division. You're going to have Shohei back to getting on the mound here in a little bit as well. I think at some point in his career, he's going to have to stop pitching, but granted, you got to use it while you can, and I think he could get back to being the pitcher we've seen in the past. Imagine if the Dodgers get to the World Series with him as a pitcher. That would be something to see. But you also got to look at not just Ohtani. Freddie Freeman, probably one of the best guys to have in a lineup, and he's a great clubhouse presence. And his story is just incredible when you look at somebody like Freddie Freeman. He has a great story, and everything about him in last year's World Series, I think, came to fruition. Obviously, you look at some of the other players that the Dodgers have, the rotation in particular. I like Blake Snell as probably your number one pitcher, but I'll tell you what, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, I think, is going to have some really good stuff. And as your number two pitcher, obviously, you got Shohei coming back most likely later in the year. But I think Yamamoto could be a really good pitcher for the not the Yankees, but the Dodgers. Excuse me. I think that's going to really help. And can you have Mookie Betts kind of bounce back and be the efficient guy we saw him be, maybe like even going back to his Boston days? I think Mookie Betts last year was kind of underrated, but in the postseason he didn't deliver like someone like Freddie Freeman did, and that goes for Ohtani too. But to me, the Dodgers are a juggernaut, and I think it's going to be hard for anyone to stop a juggernaut. Number two, I'd taken the Diamondbacks, and it's probably because I think the Josh Naylor addition, getting an additional probably 30 home runs on the season, is going to significantly help that lineup. I think it's something they needed, and I think that was the right move for them. When you look at the Diamondbacks rotation, it's okay, but I still think they have some really good offensive pieces. You look at the Padres, I think they slip a little bit to the three spot, and I'm going to round up at the bottom there. Colorado's going to finish in last place. They're a Miami Marlins. They're a Chicago White Sox. They're a wasteland, and they just moved off of Nolan Jones. And that leaves your number four team being the San Francisco Giants. But the Giants have the potential to be good too. So to me, even though I think the NL East is going to be the slugfest, the NL West might not be far off in terms of some teams that you may think aren't going to compete, but still compete for wild card spots. But I think the Dodgers are just too big of a juggernaut to stop.
Yeah, my thoughts on this division: the Dodgers are amazing. There's not really, I mean, anybody, like in the sense of not talking about the awful teams. There's not much time to spend on the Dodgers too, because the biggest question for the Dodgers will be: we know they'll win the NL West, we know they'll be great all year. Do they break Seattle's record, like of most wins the regular season? That'll be the most interesting thing
No,
to track about the Dodgers this year.
you might think that's possible, but I don't believe they will. I mean, I guess anything's possible. What would it be? 117 and 45, right? Would be the record.
Yeah, I
Okay, yeah.
don't think they will either, only because they're gonna load manage. I mean, there's guys on the Dodgers bench who would like hit cleanup for a lot of other Major League Baseball teams. Like, I mean, you started going into it, but the lineup is just ludicrously loaded. The pitching rotation's incredible. The bullpen's incredible. They have about four different guys in there who you put in the ninth inning to get a save. I mean, so yeah, the Dodgers are going to be incredible. I like the Diamondbacks a lot. And I know you said their pitching's okay. I think their pitching's going to be really good, man. Like really good. I mean, Corbin Burns is going to be your ace.
Yeah, Burns is the big one I think we should highlight too.
Yeah, absolutely. Burns is going to be a stud. Zach Gallen's in a contract year. Merrill Kelly, I think, is in a contract year. Both those guys are going to be great. Obviously, Montgomery's kind of like a dark cloud over top of them. Can they move off of him? They still may by opening day, by 72 hours from now. I think they probably will. And then I think Eduardo Rodriguez is going to bounce back nicely. And then I, I like the Diamondbacks lineup too, and I agree with you. Naylor will be a big boost to replace the loss of Christian Walker, who walked, no pun intended, or pun fully intended, walked to the Astros in free agency. So I like the Diamondbacks. Padres, good team, but they're getting older. I'm with you. I don't know how much they have left in the tank. As far as that lineup, a lot of those guys are starting to get older, so we'll see about them. Giants, I think, will be okay. And then the Rockies, again, not.
Someone's got to finish fourth. Like I think the Giants, like if they played in the NL Central, would finish first or second. But someone's
I
got to
agree
finish
with
fourth.
you.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. The Giants will probably finish fourth, and they'll be a big byproduct of playing in such a darn good division. And then the Rockies, we don't need to waste time. They're essentially like the Marlins or the White Sox, as you pointed out.
I
We're
think
not going to waste the time discussing them.
there is, I'd say, four teams in particular that we could just consider like writing off the entire season. Like we know they're about to play 162 games. We know they're probably only going to win between 40 to 60 of those games. And if you look at those four teams, it's clearly the White Sox, it's clearly the Angels, it's clearly the Miami Marlins, and it's clearly the Colorado Rockies. Those are the four absolute worst teams in the sport.
So I take with that statement, you're rescinding your previous statement that the Rangers are going to finish fifth in the AL West, Andrew.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I did not think that through. I forgot about DeGrom for a second. I forgot about the fact the Rangers just won the World Series. I think it was like a heat of the moment thing where I was just like,
right.
I don't know. Because the thing about the Rangers,
I'm just giving you a hard time. Don't
I know you are.
Yeah.
I know you are. And you should, because that's a fair point. Because the thing about the Rangers for me, man, is that the Rangers, like, they were pretty bad last year. They weren't a good team. And
no, they weren't.
It might have been a hangover from the World Series, but I mean, they were not a good baseball team last year. So
no, they weren't. No, I'm not disputing that.
They're well managed and everything, and they did win a World Series, so clearly they should get some leeway there. But I mean, they're definitely not. They're not the Angels. I can't put them in that category. I do rescind that. I'm going to make sure that the Angels are my fifth place prediction, and that the Rangers at least finish fourth in a division that may have them finish three. But I still think even maybe the A's are better than them because the A's on paper look like they could be okay, at least compete with a lot of teams.
I think the A's are definitely better than the Angels for sure. I think if you want me to truly cover the whole 30 teams here, to me the most interesting thing to follow on the Rockies will be, do they DFA Chris Bryant this year and just eat the money? Because I think it's getting close to that point. It's got to be, right. Like he's been horrendous there.
That's true, but you know the question for the Rockies is who else are they going to DFA? They're awful. There's nothing about the Colorado Rockies that just shines to you, and you say, "Wow, that's going to be a team that competes for a World Series." The Rockies historically are not a very good organization, and they've only been around since 1993. Can we emphasize this? They've been to one World Series. They had the Game 163. There is some history there, but if you're a fan of the Colorado Rockies, you know what I'm thinking? You got a team down at your arena right now in the Denver Nuggets that's probably going to compete for an NBA championship. You have an exciting rookie talent in Bo Nix in the Denver Broncos. And the Colorado Avalanche, they have their ups and their downs. They won a Stanley Cup not too long ago. So you have three other teams in Denver right now that are way better than the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Rockies are probably a consideration in the running for the Browns of baseball. I can't say that about the Marlins. They've won 2 World Series. I cannot say that about the Pittsburgh Pirates. They've won World Series before. I can't say that about the Oakland A's. Same reason. Or the LA Angels. They've won titles. The Colorado Rockies have done jack ever. They don't do anything. They just exist, Jerome.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the best thing about the Rockies, and I would like to go there, maybe a trip that, I don't know if I'll do it this year or the next few years. Point being, the best thing about the Rockies is Coors Field. Folks say it's a beautiful ball yard, and I'd like to get myself out there, but yeah, no, you're right. Um, they had like a little run with Story Arenado and those guys, and it's tough though for them because Andrew, you can take the greatest pitchers in baseball. It's just I don't know how they can develop pitching with Coors Field. It's that much of a factor, in my opinion.
And you also have to consider the altitude. I mean, it's tough to play any sport in Denver. I mean,
No, it is.
anybody just ask the Browns when they played the Broncos earlier this year, like, or ask anybody that goes up in the NBA. I mean, the Denver Nuggets really don't have a great history either until Nikola Jokic got there. But the Denver Nuggets did make some playoff runs and make some noise at times on a somewhat of a consistent basis. The Denver Broncos obviously are a historic franchise, and you look at the Colorado Avalanche, they're probably up there as getting to being a historic franchise at this point. The Colorado Rockies do nothing ever. They just exist. They're just the fourth probably worst team in all of Denver. I mean,
you're right.
They're awful.
Hey, you're right, but now we've talked too much about them now.
I know we have, and they probably don't deserve that attention. But you know what? We should give these teams some attention too at the same time. I know I talked about the White Sox not putting them on any platform, but the White Sox have at least a storied history. They've won World Series titles. 2005 was special in the South Side of Chicago. I mean, you look at the Miami Marlins. I mean, granted, yes, are they a historically bad organization? Absolutely. They won 2 World Series championships. At the end of the day, they won 2 World Series. One of them was against us. I mean, so Miami has some storied history. You look at the LA Angels. They won I think it was 2002 or 3. Was it 02? I think it was 02, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 02. They won the World Series. That was a tremendous year for them.
You're right, but
and at least the Angels developed talent. Like they got Mike Trout. They developed Shohei to be a two-way player, a very good one, and that's very.
I'm not giving them credit for Shohei. He came to America. He would have been. He could have signed with the Rockies. He would have been. Great.
Yeah, true, but
I'm not giving them.
He started somewhere, and he started with the LA Angels. It just so happens that the other team in LA is top dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that when it comes to Major League Baseball. Some great organizations. Obviously, the New York Yankees, as much as we all despise them, they're the best team in all of baseball. Treasured history, 27 titles, possibly on the verge of a 28th. I doubt it this year because of all the injuries, but still, the Yankees are the Yankees. We know what they do. You look at the Dodgers, storied organization, probably developing even more history now in the modern era. I would argue the Dodgers might be, if they won another World Series, a better 21st century baseball team than the New York Yankees were in the 20th. You could legitimately make a case there. And heck, you know what? Even though, and I complain about this with baseball all the time, Jerome. You know my feelings on Rob Manfred. You know I think he's the worst commissioner in all of sports. But the bottom line is when it comes to salary caps and floors and all that, give the St. Louis Cardinals some credit. That's a really well-run organization.
No, I completely agree. And St. Louis is one of those historically great organizations too, Andrew.
Yeah, I think they're second in World Series titles all time. Like they're treasured teams. And even the Guardians, Indians, they go back so long. The Reds, I mean, teams like the Colorado Rockies are truly disgusting. Like the fact that the ownership group spends no money, they never get better, and they're always terrible. That's really where the Colorado Rockies
and they refuse to rebuild either. That's why it's frustrating, but yeah.
Do they even have fans? I mean, honestly, do fans go to Coors Field?
Yes. That's the thing that amazes me. They consistently finish really, really good in attendance. And that's why I said Coors Field is one of the greatest assets, because if they didn't have such a gorgeous, beautiful ballpark, dude, they finish top 10 in attendance every year. You got to give those people credit.
Well, they know how to sell tickets, but they definitely don't know how to sell ball players and coming in. Like you got guys like Jokic and Jamal Murray to recruit free agents for the Denver Nuggets, and probably Sean Payton's going to be a big asset for you if you're the Broncos. But not a good time to be in the Rocky Mountains ever if you're a baseball fan. That's for sure. A baseball enthusiast like myself, I'm glad to say I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, compared to Denver, Colorado. But granted, Denver, I'm a big fan of that football team here too, and they're always garbage. And the Denver Broncos, until recently, they failed to deliver since 2015. But other than that, historically they always deliver. So. Moving off of baseball now, let's get to the NBA and then we'll wrap things up here on Raw Takes for today. I know this was a little bit of a longer edition of the show. We're planning on making a lot of these with guests longer, so props to Jerome for coming on. Thank you very much. As always, great friend of mine here. And make sure to check out Cleveland Sports Realm. I'll remind you of that at the end of the show. We'll have the link in the description below to the YouTube page. The NBA right now, to me, Jerome, I honestly think there's really three juggernaut teams. There's one I think that's a fraud out of those three juggernaut teams, and I'll explain what it is, and you might not like my answer. But to me, the NBA right now, it's coming down to the wire. There's so many teams that I think are really surprising this year. There's so many teams that I think are on the verge of maybe being something, but probably will end up failing. And there's plenty of teams that are just awful, like the Wizards and Jazz, and we don't even need to talk about them. I'll first start off with my three juggernauts, Jerome. They're the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Thunder. One of those teams I think is fraudulent. Can you guess which one you think it is?
Cavs.
It's the Cavs. The reason I say it's the Cavs is because not the 4-game losing streak. I'm honestly not upset by the 4-game losing streak as a whole. It's one game in particular out of that 4 games that really, really gets me concerned about the Cavs. Which game do you think it is, Jerome?
I am going to say the Clipper game.
No, it is not the Clipper game. To me, that loss didn't bother me at all.
I don't know. Tell me, please.
The Orlando Magic game.
Really? That
The
one
Orlando
bothered me.
Magic game pissed me off, Jerome, as a huge diehard Cavs fan. And you know why it pissed me off? You're up 60 to 47 at the half. DeAndre Hunter, ice in his veins. Donovan Mitchell, ice in his veins. They're doing all the moves. They had no business losing that game. They had no business letting Paolo Banchero and a bad Orlando Magic team that they beat down in the playoffs in Game 7 in the second half torch them like that. How do you get away with that? They got away with murder in that game to me. But they
Well,
murdered themselves. They had no business losing that game, and that game shows me that the Cavs still have some softness to them. And not only that, I look at the Cavs, Jerome, before I let you get to your point. Donovan Mitchell at the end of the day is 3-7 in playoff series. I think, and Evan Mobley didn't play in that game either, but Evan Mobley, to me, he's got to be the guy possibly to maybe help the Cavs win a championship. To me, the Celtics have been there and done that, and to me, the Thunder are young and up and coming, and I think they have the best player out of all three of those teams in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Definitely at least the best player in the league this year. What do you think?
well, my thoughts are I'm not going to put too much into one game. I think it was frustrating loss, and I think the reason you're probably feeling that way as a fan, and as I felt as a fan, is because of the history, and we didn't think we should have played 7 games against the Magic last year. We ended up playing 7 games against the Magic last year. We were down in the half, had to make this heroic comeback to even get to the Celtics last year. So I think a lot of those feelings are coming from that. Like you pointed out, Ev didn't play. To me, the most concerning thing about the Cavs has been Donovan Mitchell's slippage in play lately. I don't
Yeah.
know, I guess better it happened now than it happens in a month from now, but still, I just don't like to see that from my superstar. Overall, I'm not too worried about the Cavs. It was good to see them get back their mojo yesterday and beat the crap out of the Jazz. But, you know,
And I'll emphasize they're
I
going to beat the
think,
crap out of the
I think,
Blazers too.
yeah, Andrew, I think part of it is they've been so damn good this regular season that now our expectations are so high. So anytime they do lose, we freak out. And people, to me, totally over exaggerated and overdid the whole 4 game win streak. Like it's done with. Okay, we got back on the books yesterday with the win. Yes, it was frustrating. Yes, it was annoying, but we don't need to, you know, freak out. Everything we have set out for our goals is still in front of us.
I would agree with you on that. The goals are still there. We'll see what takes place. And listen, I think the Cavs are easily going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I look at this Eastern Conference right now. Milwaukee, Giannis is great, but they have nothing else right now. Damian Lillard should be a lot better than he's been. They're probably going to be the sixth seed as of right now. It's looking closer and closer like it could be. I like almost Detroit better than them at this point. They're playing more efficient basketball. So
Well,
to me, it's like you're getting most likely in Orlando in round one, which might be a concern because we lost that game to them. But I think overall, you're still beating them in 7 games. You're going to beat Indiana, Milwaukee, or if it's Detroit in that second round too. I think most likely your best bet is probably Indiana, to be honest with you. You're definitely beating them in 7 games. If it's Milwaukee, I'd say you'd beat them too, even though Giannis probably gets you a game win if you're Milwaukee. But you're going to probably get to the Celtics in the conference finals. And to me, it's games like the Magic where you had it and you let it go that rub me the wrong way. And I'll be honest with you, the Celtics, man, they're not a great home team, but they're a pretty darn good road team. I mean, yeah, they're a great home team. They're the defending champions. I don't mean it like that. But a lot of their biggest losses this year have came on their home floor. So if the Cavs have home court advantage in that series, I kind of expect them to steal games on the road and lose at home. I think that's going to come down to the wire. And it may be a game 7 in your own building, which I don't necessarily know I love that for the Cavs.
no, I don't know either. I right now I'm still thinking the Cavs can beat Boston. I don't know if that's just me being a big homer because I am. Sometimes, I
Yeah.
try to look at through as objective as a lens as I can, Andrew. But I'm not super worried about that right now. We'll see what happens. But again, I think overall the Cavs, and you do bring up a good point. Boston knows how to win on the road, probably better than anybody in this current juncture of the NBA. But I don't think it's something to freak out about. And let's just take it one series at a time. Everybody's like getting worried about this Boston series. Well, you're still going to have to play two darn good playoff teams to get there. And
Okay, if the Magic make the playoffs, I hate to cut you off there, but if the Magic make the playoffs, come on. I mean, if that's your opponent in round one, you got to win that series in 5 games
well, no,
maximum.
they absolutely should, gentlemen, sweep the Magic at the most. The Magic have had a lot of injuries. They haven't been great this year. You're right. But no, to me, I'm just gonna take it one game at a time. But overall, I'm ready for the playoffs to get here. And I'm not gonna overreact to regular season losses. Sorry, I don't know. I'm just not in that business right now.
I think Evan Mobley not playing in that Magic game might have been the big factor for me still to not be as concerned, but the way the
His
Cavs lost that
impact
game.
on the defensive end of the floor is remarkable how important he is. It really is.
And it showed in that game against the Magic. And that's a game you need. I think I don't want to say that's a must-win game. Obviously, it's not because the Cavs are in first place, and but you're up 60-47, and Evan Mobley was not on the floor. You had no business losing that game even without him. That's just my view on that.
Uh,
So that's just where I'll leave it.
yeah, no, listen, like I said, it was a frustrating loss. I'm not going to discredit that by any means, but people freaking out about it. I thought the freak out factor was a little high for me, from my point of view.
It's probably a little bit of a freak out for me too, but I was very concerned about us beating Boston based on that game alone so far. To wrap things up, I'll say this: Oklahoma City has already clinched the 1 seed in the West. So to kind of talk about the West a little bit, you look at kind of like what is a 4 or 5 team race between Houston, Memphis, uh, the Denver Nuggets, the who am I missing here? The Lakers. I said the Lakers, didn't I?
No,
Lakers.
you didn't.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, that's who I'm missing then. The Lakers, the
Yep.
Nuggets, the Rockets, and the uh, Memphis Grizzlies. Did I say Memphis? I'm saying them all at once. So either way, that's like a 5 team horse race there to who gets to be 2 through 5. Obviously, we know how good OKC is. I think OKC is coming out of the West. I'll be very honest with you. So I'm going to take OKC to go all the way. But those teams, that race is so interesting to me because I think Denver has the best player out of all those teams. But to me, like the Houston Rockets are just so young and upcoming. That's why they're fun. I don't think they're winning a big time playoff series when it comes to
No,
the
I
They're not.
agree.
Well
Maybe
coached,
not.
great story. Not coming down to the wire there. You look at the Memphis Grizzlies, they're a young and upcoming team with 2 very good players in John Morant and Jaren Jackson. And then you look at the Lakers. To me, they don't defend anybody. So to me, it's like LeBron and Luka, and that's it right now, really. And Austin Reeves probably making a case for maybe being the third best player on the team. And then the Denver Nuggets, they're starting to feel a little bit like the Milwaukee Bucks now, where they won a championship and things are kind of starting to slip away from them. But Jokic is still a phenomenal player.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with everything you said. I think that to me, the team that is going to end up matching with Oklahoma City, I think, is going to be the Lakers, just because Luka's that good of a player. If Bron comes back healthy for the playoffs at 40 years old, he's still playing phenomenally. And I think the Lakers have what makes LeBron successful in the playoffs. They have guys who can shoot. Uh, you know, Rui Hachimura, and like you pointed out, where I think the Lakers could struggle is inside. Excuse me, inside. That could come back to bite them in the butt. But overall, I do think that the Lakers are going to end up getting to the Western Conference Finals and play a knock 'em out, drag it out fight with the Thunder.
We'll have to see how it all goes out too, because literally, I think from Houston to LA, all those teams have the potential to be the 2 seed right now. It's so close. It
Yeah,
really
no, it
is.
is.
It's
It
going to go
is.
down to the wire, and I think playoff matchups are going to be really, really important. I don't want to see. I think the Houston Rockets are a team I'd want to see anybody play against, but I don't want to see Memphis. I don't want to see the Denver Nuggets. Those are the two I don't want to see. The Lakers, I'm not as confident in as you are. But uh, once again, Jerome, thank you for joining the pod. We actually have to get going here. We got to wrap things up. So I want to thank Jerome Petukaukas talking baseball with me, getting into the NBA and a little bit about March Madness as we wrap things up here on Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Make sure to check out his podcast with Kevin Shagru, the Cleveland Sports Realm. I'm going to have to talk about making a guest appearance on there sometime, Jerome. And
Yeah,
I really
soon enough.
appreciate you coming on board again.
Andrew will be on there, so we look forward to that. And thanks again for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun talking sports with you. I'll come on anytime you need me to.
You're the man, Jerome, as always. Make sure to stay tuned for more Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Our next edition will be out on Friday. Have a good one, everyone.